Hey everybody, hope you're all good. The weekend came and it went. Oh my god, we have been like the house of the damned, so I apologise for the lack of content that's been going up. But it's not been good. It's not because Cuddles has been poorly and I've been ill and it has been a miserable affair. But today I want to talk about something other than our plague-ridden household, and that is Planet Zoo. What specifically at Planet Zoo are we going to touch upon today? Well, we're going to talk about the trading house. We're going to talk about animals being traded and then being gazumped, I think is the best way I can put it. Yeah, and that something drastically needs to be done to fix this. Now, what do I mean? Well, a lot of people, so for instance, we've got, I think it's bears coming up as the community challenge, and we just had, I think it was the lowland gorilla. And basically what would happen is there were a lot of people that were putting animals up very cheap, so the whole community could get involved and partake. Because obviously these are, at the moment, we haven't had wild African dogs as a community challenge. It's all been quite high-end stuff. So, you know, in the spirit, it's the same thing people did in beta. Cuddles herself was one that was, I think it was the African lions, was very much, oh, everybody, you know, put them up as cheap as you can. And people were doing this. Fair play, as I will never ever deny that this is one of the best communities for gaming that I have ever been part of. And yet there are people that are taking these animals and literally then just leaving them in their trading house, so that they're, or their trade centre, so they'll buy an animal for say 10 conservation points, and then they'll put them up for 1,000 or 5,000 to capitalise on money. Now, is this against the rules? Is this whatever term you want to give? Naughty, whatever? No, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly acceptable to be doing that. But it goes, I would say, against the morality of what people are trying to do. It goes against the spirit, is the best term. The spirit of what people are trying to achieve by putting these up cheap, so that everybody in the community can be part of this. So, I was trying to think, what is the way to combat this? Because there's nobody's at fault here. The system is in the game to allow you to do this, and it is no different to World of Warcraft or any other game whereby you see something on for cheap, you buy it, and you flip it. People have made millions. I've made a lot of gold in World of Warcraft off of doing that. It's a common practice. But obviously, given the target audience for Zoo and the spirit of Zoo, it's kind of defeats the purpose of why people are trying to help each other out, trying to get as many people involved in these community challenges as possible. And it kind of goes against the ethos of the community challenge. So I was trying to rack my brain and think, how can we fix this? And this is my solution. And let me know what you think. And I'm kind of, this is still percolating and still going through my head. I've been sat on the game. I've been trying to think how to do it. This is the best way I can think. You have obviously released to the wild. What about if you could select a way of, say, I don't know what the wording would be, but in essence what you're trying to do is you're going to put it up for breeding. Okay, you're trying to give this animal away for breeding purposes. Now the game could either deal with that in one or two ways. It can say, okay then, as soon as you release that animal for breeding purposes, the game will give you whatever the minimum amount it can give you for that animal. So let's say 100 credits for you doing this, or 150 credits. You say, I want to donate this animal. Then what would happen is the animal would either go into the trading area for conservation points, but it would have a stipulation whereby it cannot be resold. So you can't resell this on the trading house because, you know, it's been designated for breeding, so it cannot be reused. It can't be just resold straight away. So literally, it's, and we'll get onto this bit in a second, it's as if you've bought it for cash. And that's the other option, is that you put the animal, you put the animal up for breeding, and you get 150 conservation points. And then the animal's then taken, and it's actually put into the monetized, easy for me to say, section of the trade center, so that you can buy it for money. Because potentially it might be the reason people are struggling to buy them is because they have few conservation points, and they would just want to get on the ladder of being able to get conservation points. So, you know, and money is not an issue in this game, but that's a whole other factor. So you go onto the auction house, you go into the trading centre, and there's an item on there designated for breeding. You can buy it with money, and obviously the ones you buy for money, you can't you can't release them, or you can't put them back on the trade centre for conservation points. That's the one or two ways I can think. So either they go onto the conservation auction house, I'm just going to call it auction house with the designation that they are for breeding and therefore cannot be re-put back up on the site, which would stop people trying to flip them. Or they go into the cash area, and again that means that they can't be flipped, they can't be put back up for conservation points. I can't see any other way of getting around it. It is a system that, as I say, nobody's at fault. People are using the system to their advantage, but I don't see long term what the benefits are to doing it. I won't lie. Because at the end of the day, how many things are you going to get with conservation points? How many wild and crazy things? As at the moment we're at the critical mass, so apologies if you're not a World of Warcraft or an MMO style person, but if you are playing a new game, you know, World of Warcraft, you're playing a new expansion, the resources at the very beginning are very far and few between. They're very scarce. So therefore they command a higher price. As more people have these things, the price therefore drops. So only over time the price can only drop of these items. And if I'm Frontier, I'm sat there looking at people abusing the community stuff, you know, to get more conservation points. Well, it's simple. I'm just going to put animals, I'm going to put more of these animals on the cash side. That's the simple way of completely and utterly destroying this inflated cost. And that's, I think, would make more sense. But Frontier don't seem, whether they are more, they're more focused, they're more busy at the moment trying to balance gaming issues, which I think, sadly, there's a lot of, if I'm being entirely honest. And I mean balancing issues within the game, not necessarily technical issues, not bugs, glitches, or anything like that. I think this game is struggling to call itself a simulator, I'll be entirely honest. That is a video for another time. But I think a good step in the right direction would be nipping this issue of people abusing conservation points. Because I saw this, because Cuddles was talking about it over the weekend, and she was saying that she had put one of the Chinese monkeys, I can't remember what they're called now, the white ones. She'd put them up on the auction house, and for a very low price, just so people could start getting them, because she had hundreds. She had loads of these things running around. And yet, so literally, she knew all the stats, she knew the animal, she knew everything about it. Literally, it sold instantly, and then she saw it go back up for 5,000. And that sold. And it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And I wanted to see if this was a thing, so I went on the Reddit forums today, and lo and behold, there's loads of people talking about how this is completely against the spirit and everything else of the game. It's in there, and I would have thought this would be quite a common, as in the roundtable discussions that Frontier would have had, this should have come up, this idea. But lo and behold, it has not. So that's my solution. We have a system whereby you can select that you want to put this, or just a tick box. So when you're selling the animal, you want to say, look, I'm selling this cheap, and I'm selling it, it's purely going to be for breeding purposes. And therefore, that means that the animal cannot be resold on the auction house. That would be the simplest way I can see doing this. Just a simple tick box added to say, yep, it's for breeding, this can't be resold. So somebody buys it, they cannot resell it. Job done. Job done. And it would solve this whole problem, which I think is only going to get worse and more frustrating for people. Unless Frontier then turn around and start front loading the cash store, in which case then the conservation store becomes pointless, and it's one of their big selling points. Also, last thing here is, where are all the deluxe edition animals? Because I've seen the dragon, but I haven't seen the pygmy hippo or is it the Thompson gazelle? I think it is for the collector's edition or the deluxe edition. Haven't seen it. Haven't seen them for cash. Haven't seen them for conservation points. Just not seen them. And that's kind of frustrating and annoying. But anyway, apologies if I sound a bit Debbie Downer today. One, I am not 100% at the moment. Two, there's just been some frustrating little bits about Zoo that we're going to talk about in more detail. Still loving the game. Still very much loving the concept. It's just things that I think need to be addressed before they become big issues that potentially could harm the game in its longevity. But that is me done, ladies and gentlemen. Solve the conservation crisis issue for your auction house. Frontier needs dealing with. Anyway, what are your suggestions? What are your solutions to solving this? Or is it not a problem? Hey, it's an auction house. Let people do what they want to do. Be interesting to hear your opinions on it. I'll catch you all later, everyone. Have a good one. I'm off to go and die. Have a good one.